I survived, but I made it up the ladder. That should be a feat in itself. Well, I have been a slave. But today, I am free. So many people think of trafficking as something that only happens overseas. It doesn't happen in our country because we're Americans. Remember, this is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. And yet slavery is thriving in our country. We're slaves to the very culture that we live in. And yet we don't see it. We don't see that it's our families, our children, and our teenagers. Well, when I was 4 and 5 years old, 3 neighbor boys began having sex with me. They began raping me. It was loving and gentle, and yet my only conclusion is that someone abused them the same way that they abused me. This is a cycle that continues over and over again, and I truly believe that a root cause is childhood sexual abuse. So when I was 10 years old, my father was murdered. And within just a couple years, there were many other family deaths that followed. And so by the time I was 12, I was angry, and I was hateful, and I began having sex, doing drugs, and drinking just to find acceptance, to find love. Because I didn't know what I was running from, but I knew I hurt. So at 13, I had my first miscarriage. And my mom didn't know what to do with me, as most mothers wouldn't. So by the time I was 17 years old, and the most charming man I had ever met told me that I was special. I was valuable, I was beautiful, I meant something. I felt like he saw something in me that no one else could see. And he asked me one of the most important questions of my life. He said, if you are having sex, why wouldn't you want to get paid for it? That is one of the most valid questions I've ever heard. We need money to survive. Why wouldn't I want to get paid for something I was already doing? And then I looked at the culture that we live in, the culture that we're a slave to, and I saw this lifestyle that made sense to me. I want nice clothes, I want jewelry, I want my hair done, I want nails. I want to live this life. Why wouldn't I want that? And so right here on the streets of Portland, he set me out that first night when I was 17 years old. And when that very first trick took me around the block and used me, and as I was getting out of his truck, he thought he should try to steal my purse. And so as we're wrestling, as I'm getting out of his truck, he steps on the gas and he runs me over. So laying on the asphalt, looking at the diamond imprints of his tires on my leg, I got even more angry and even more hurt. But my pimp encouraged me to keep going, that same charming man. And so for 14 months I was enslaved to him. And he trafficked me up and down that I-5 corridor that we hear about so much, from Vancouver, BC, all the way to San Diego, and every truck stop and place in between. But after 14 months, I did successfully run away, but then I found myself a slave to something completely different. I was 18, I had nowhere to go, no one to help me, no resources. What was I supposed to do? How was I supposed to get a job? So I continued on for another 2 years in that same life because it was the only thing I knew how to do. But I don't want to leave you with just a sad story. There really is hope. And there really is freedom. And you really can be more than a survivor. You can be a conqueror. And today, because of my Creator, I stand before you free of bitterness and shame and guilt and hate and pain. You can be free. We can overcome. So I want to leave you with a challenge. It's truly more than a challenge, it's a plea from my heart. That we would stand together as a great nation, as a state, as a community, that we would stand and we would stop this. That we would fight as the land of the free and the home of the brave. That we would stop trafficking our own children. Thank you.